So how can we combine wagtail and Next.js in a nice way? I've been looking how to work on that and how we can easily integrate it and make it logic and easy for everyone to build websites with it. Yeah, there is already existing work on this. There's a repository called wagtail-pivot, which is by a Swedish company, I think it's called Freud. They did very nice work on building a cookie cutter project with wagtail and Next.js. I like a lot what they've been doing, and they have been solving a lot of common problems like review modes and password-protected pages and stuff like that. But they also are very opinionated, in my opinion. You have to use their cookie cutter is very custom. It doesn't use the wagtail API mostly. It just uses the REST framework API, and it has integration with a lot of stuff and Storybook, which I really like. But for me, it feels also that you don't really have your own choices anymore because you have to do it that way. So I was looking a bit further, like how can we make it more general? Then I noticed wagtail also was operating with Next.js. Wagtail currently has a project called RE-Yet, where they are doing also some research on Next.js, which is really nice, and they keep track of how far they are. So I was surprised that Wagtail themselves are also interested in Next.js and happy. So then I arrived at the wagtail-space and wanted to improve on the Next.js stuff, and I noticed that a lot of people from Wagtail and other companies are also interested in Next.js, which is stuff great. So what I wanted to do to show better how to integrate Wagtail and Next.js is to use the Wagtail bakery demo to turn it into a project with Wagtail and Next.js together. So that bakery demo, the bakery demo is a Wagtail demo site for new developers to learn to work with Wagtail and see what the possibilities of the CMS are. So it's a repository you can check out, and then you can play around with Wagtail. I think it's nice to turn it into a project where it uses Next.js as a front end, and you can learn how you can solve the problems with Next.js, and you can also talk about it and see how it can be done even better. And maybe you can make a Wagtail helper package to better integrate Next.js later. So I want to talk about how I solved some stuff for the Wagtail bakery sites and some common topics that are occurring when you have when you try to make a headless CMS front end, like routing of the pages and different templates, and how can we make stream fields render correctly, and rich text is pretty hard. Images are interesting, and well, then you have the more advanced admin features. And then you have caching and forms. Caching mainly because the front-end framework also offers Next.js does the option to do server-side rendering. That's the incremental static generation, which I really like. And then the page is generated on the website. That's on the server. That's static generation. And upon next request, you only have to download static HTML, and it will be really fast. Then there's incremental static generation. That means that the pages are not necessarily generated on the server, but they are generated on the server when the user first requests them. So I think this is very useful for Wagtail because people will make new pages all the time, and you don't necessarily want to immediately generate everything all the time. So this is a feature I really like. Server-side rendering, on the other hand, just means that every request by any client in the browser, it will do a request to Next.js and to Wagtail. So you can more customly build the page, so it has less issues with caching. Static generation has issues with caching because, well, when you change something, you cannot use the static generated HTML again. So then we also need solutions for that. Alright, so the typical Next.js setup is that Next.js is a server, the runs on server and on the client. and the client just requests a page from Next.js, and Next.js says like, oh, I have it in the cache, so I can just send it to you. Or Next.js thinks, I don't have it in the cache and I need to build it, and then I need Wagtail to help me build a page. And then you can serve it to the client, and then the client can, from then on, also call the Wagtail API to further build a page and get more out of it. Yes, so I want to show some coding actually. Alright, so here we have the Wagtail Bakery demo CMS with the Wagtail 3.0 with new colors. Yeah, so this is the Wagtail API. And here with the bakery demo, this is already running on Next.js. I don't have every component copied. I'm just going gradually over it. Yeah, so the first topic I want to talk about is routing. So when you go somewhere, you would like this is the routing, the URLs. So you want them to be able to manage them. And Next.js provides routing options. They have a directory called pages, and you can build your own routes here. Here, index is just a common name, but any name you put here as a file is like a URL segment that you can use as a page. Then it also has variable pages. So in this case, I just grab the whole path as an array. That's an option from Next.js, and this will be a catch-all that will just find any page that a user requests. And what I'm actually doing then is I call the Wagtail API endpoint, and it will give me, I can send an HTML URL to it, and then it will give me the redirect URL to the page that is connected to that URL. And then I can get the page data from that. Actually, this function is doing that. So that allows me to get the Wagtail API JSON for any page that that is requested by the user, and I think that's the best way to solve routing for now, because from Wagtail you can do any routing you like, you can create any page you like, and Next.js will just ask Wagtail which page is actually needed, and then you can render it. Yeah, so what happens when a page arrives, we basically get the page data from Wagtail. Currently I say revalidate every 12 hours, well, based on how much you like your guessing. I think it's mostly should be less. And then I just render a base component, which will be like the base HTML from Wagtail templates, like the basic page. So Next.js offers an option to create a head element which will fill the head for a certain URL. So this is very useful for social OG tags and search engine optimization, because any page can have a different URL, different tags. And you can also add components to it in different components. You can add stuff to it by just using this head wrapper, and Next.js will gather everything together and put it in the head. Yeah, so currently I render here the basic structure of the Wagtail page, which is a menu bar, breadcrumbs optionally, and a template. So yeah, of course you have different templates, because in Wagtail you have the page models. So every page model can have a different template. So we can solve that by mapping the templates from Wagtail to templates from React. So here I say if I have a homepage, I want to render the homepage templates, and if I have a bread page, I want to render the bread page templates, etc. The nice part is also that this dynamic allows the code only to be loaded when it's necessary, so your JavaScript code that needs to be downloaded is smaller. Yeah, so then we would load, for example, the homepage in this case, and then it will render. Basically, I copied the Wagtail homepage templates and rewrote it to React, which is kind of the same as HTML for the most part. And I think React looks pretty clean and nice. That's what I like about it. Yeah, so that's about routing. Am I still reading this? Yeah, so what I noticed, what I didn't know when working with the web API, it's actually already quite powerful. You can query the fields you like at any moment, and you can query lists of stuff, and you can, a lot of it is already inside. So actually, I had less problems making web Next.js components than I assumed. But I do think it would be nice if we have problems that we can see if the web API needs to be improved for some points. Yeah, so that's nice to research. So for example, in this space, the bread space, so here we have a selection of breads and we have designation. So in the React component, I can actually just call the wagtail API and say, hey, I want 6 breads and in alphabetical order or whatever order I want. And then when I go to the next page, I can query different selection of things. So it's it's dynamic loading, and it works pretty fast and well, I think. So that's something nice. Yeah, so how can we render stream fields? In the admin, multiple stream fields can be defined, and each has their own rendering. But the nice thing is that Wagtail API already supports nested stream fields to API. I can also show, by the way, the JSON is for this page. This is an example of a complex query you can do. You can just basically put a query of stuff you want, and you can specify which fields you want, and then you get like pretty custom. So for example, for home base, you get yeah, so basically components, and then we have stream fields. For example, I think it's called body. Yeah, so then we get a paragraph block. A stream fields have type, value, and ID. And then in React Next.js, we can also render these by, well, for example, on the home page. I can make a mapping from blocks, just like the templates, to templates that will be rendered for the block, and then I can actually loop over the stream fields and just render these blocks. For that, I also made a component vector stream data, which I give a block mapping, and then I just render it to the page. This is story. So then I get this rich text. Yeah, so rich text is also pretty hard because Wagtail, by default, it will create references in the rich text output. So I think that's something that could be improved in the API, and I think someone was working also on it in this sprint, so that's super nice. That the page URLs are actually URLs and not links to pages, because that's hard to find the correct page for in Wagtail in Next.js. So what I'm basically using to convert the rich text is a utility where I found this package that rewrites HTML to React, and I can turn elements into Next.js elements. For example, the anchor element, Next.js has a link component, which recognizes that the link is an internal link on the website, and then it can already prefetch links on the page that you are on. So loading will be a lot faster. So it's really nice to make use of that to go around the website, because it will feel very fast and not flashy. So I process each rich text element with this function to turn it into React actually, and then I can manipulate it. So it's pretty useful. Yeah, then images are always hard, responsive images, but Next.js has a nice image component that actually maps pretty well to the Wagtail API output. So in the end, for simple images, I only need I can almost directly map them to a Next.js image. Here I'm actually doing an experiment with optimizing the width and height, but basically I can just render the next image, convert the source depending on how your server settings are to the correct FS URL, and I can just map the width and height of the image to it, and it will work pretty well. Next.js supports multiple layouts, so here I render an image and I say the fill layout, and then it will fill a whole container, just like an original. And otherwise, you can also use the regular layout, and you have some different layouts based on what you exactly need for images, because you have different use cases. So what I also do for rendering images on the backend, I use API fields from Wagtail. Yeah, so basically my pages, I need to expose the data from the page to the API. So Wagtail has API fields for that, and then you can put database fields and model fields from your API. You can expose them, and often you will need some customization on it. So then you can use serializers, their REST framework concepts that allows you to customize the output of certain fields. So example for images, I use the rendition fields because I like to keep the Wagtail focus points functionality, and that's currently in Wagtail. So I first make a basic cutout from the image, and then I let Next.js handle the image. Next.js built-in image handler is already pretty good. It uses the Sharp JavaScript library, and it's pretty good at resizing and rescaling. So this will work pretty fast in my opinion, in my experience. So I'm happy with that. There's also more advanced options. If you really want faster images, then there's support for external loaders. So that these are external services that can crop and use your images and serve your images really fast. I think they are very interesting to explore, but then you also have to find out how to combine it with the Wagtail focus points functionality, because you would like to keep the CMS behavior from what you expect to get and what the image will give you. Yeah, then caching is always an issue. So the server-side rendering is by far the easiest option. For simple sites, I think it's nice to use the static generation for really fast sites. And actually, I wrote a simple backend for the Wagtail frontend cache. That will, since recently Next.js has support with its own API, which allows you to invalidate static generated pages. So with the Wagtail frontend cache, I can see if someone saves the Wagtail page, and then the Wagtail frontend cache will call the Next.js API actually and request the page to be first, and then I can use, well, I can have cached static pages, and on save I can have them refreshed, which is really nice, I think. Well, for menu changes, it's harder, of course, so therefore I think it's nice to at least refresh your whole next pages every 10 minutes or whatever. That's my presentation. Yeah, that's most of it. Yeah, preview mode. I made like a hacky version of preview mode that will work for draft pages, and also it's protected with a password. But I noticed now that Wagtail has their own headless preview package, which I think is way better and supports everything. So I still need to see how I can integrate it, but that's great. Then the admin user bar is also a very nice feature for users. I think it shows the people at Torchbox call it the edit words. is the bird in the bottom right that allows you to edit the current page. I think it's really useful for admin users, but it can of course not be guessed on a static page. So on every page I do an extra call to the backend to see if the user is logged in, and if so, I just render the static HTML from the template tag and put it here, and it works, so it's nice. So that's for that. And well, forms are actually pretty hard. I thought I'll solve forms also, but they still need some more support from the wagtail API possibly. But I also have to research it, and I think also someone from Overcast was doing some work on it, which is nice. So I hope actually to make progress on this soon and be able to integrate forms also easily. But it's not very easy at the moment. Okay, well, so to summarize, I think the wagtail API is already pretty good, and it needs some minor tweaks to for a little bit better support, like maybe basic rendition field support for stream field blocks and rich text conversion for stream field blocks, stuff like that. I think it would be nice if we could have at some point like a wagtail package for Next.js or a wagtail package, so that it will be even easier to use Next.js and have the great have an easy integration. Yeah, so each topic has actually multiple ways of handling them. I really like about Next.js that it's so open that you can still investigate more options depending on what you need. And also with wagtail is nice. So yeah, stuff I would like to do further research on now is the form support and routable pages, which also is related to form support in a way. Internationalization, Next.js has internationalization and wagtail has internationalization, but I haven't. They work together, but I haven't done it very thoroughly. So I might run into problems, and also someone from wagtail-space was having some problems with it. So there's some stuff to fix there. And then the advanced admin features, I think the Pipit wagtail package solves some of those, so they are very interesting to look at. And also wagtail solved some of those with the head of preview package. So there's progress being made. That's nice. And then there's guessing. I'm not sure. I think we'll see later about how. I think it's basically very custom what you need for caching. So that's what I want to show. So thanks. Any questions?
Any questions?
Anybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Is the wagtail API adhering to any standards like JSON API, or can we use GraphQL? Because now we have to build the Next.js bridge to wagtail.
The wagtail API is basically REST framework. So it's built on REST framework, and it basically uses all the features from REST framework.
But the data format is not adhering to the standard. It's not JSON API, for example.
It's a JSON API, right?
The JSON API defines relationships, that kind of stuff, and parameters you can add in the URL, and so that you can use another framework than Next.js to talk to the API without needing to write a new integration layer.
That sounds interesting to compare. I don't know for exactly actually. That's nice. Any more questions?
Well, maybe this can be something we can talk about over languages.
Yes.
For a talk. All right. How's everybody doing? Oh, you got another question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Personalization. Do we have any plans in doing that? So blocks with a login message or.
So what I personally think for minor personalization is to just do additional API calls after having the static generated site to enrich the site with login content. But if it's very different, then it will. If the login content is very different, then maybe you want to go for server-side rendering anyway to always know what user is requesting your page. But I like the idea of having set generation with additional API calls.
Yes, but you only want to refresh the new data, so you don't want to fetch the old.
No, certainly, yes. So you want to fetch parts and then updates them. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is going to be held by Jacob, Phil, and Carl from Torchbox. And they're going to talk about Wagtail Builder.
Hello. Thanks very much, and thanks a lot to 4Digits and Coop particularly for organising this and having us and welcoming us into this city, this brilliant auditorium and venue. We're really pleased and proud to be here today. Oh, we're thanking each other. Carl, Jacob and I all work at Torchbox, and we spent a lot of time thinking about Wagtail, surprise, surprise, and how we can improve Wagtail, the product, and how we can think about Wagtail's ecosystem and think about how we can improve it for our users and grow it. And today we're going to talk to you about a new product in Wagtail's ecosystem. And that product's called Wagtail Builder. Surprise, surprise. Thanks Tom for referencing it earlier. We're really excited about it. Wagtail Builder is a prototyping and site building tool for Wagtail with no code needed. So, what does that mean? It means you can have some custom content modeling, you can deploy that out, you can test the Wagtail admin, you can realize you got it wrong, go back, make changes, you can have other users in there doing the same things with you. And then once you get it perfect, you can then go and export that code directly to your GitHub and either put that on your production server or go and extend and expand it as you see fit with your own custom code. So we're really excited about this. We think it can open Wagtail up potentially to lots of different scenarios and to different applications, and also we think it could really change the way which some freelancers or agencies like Torchbox potentially think about building Wagtail sites and the types of Wagtail sites that we'd like to build. So I'm now going to hand over to Carl and Jacob, who are going to give us a demo of Wagtail Builder. Jacob. Thank you.
Hey everyone, so we thought the best way to kind of show Wagtail Builder was to show the kind of full life cycle, taking a new Wagtail site all the way through from an idea in your head to some code that you've exported to GitHub and are ready to work on some more. So you'll see up here the Wagtail Builder interface, and here we've just got the project listing, so everything we've built in the past. So as an example today, let's say purely hypothetical, you want to build like a site for hosting your conferences. So I'm going to start by creating a new project, and we're going to start that out. Let's say you've got a conference called wagtail-space. You're going to be hosting a range of events, and we're going to start creating that and defining our content types. Let's just create a website. You'll see there's a little deploying sign up at the top of the screen. That's because in the background, this is all, every time you make changes and deploy, you're creating a Wagtail instance hosted on Google Cloud, and that's going to let you try out what the editor experience is like. So you're not just creating content types, you're actually seeing what they're like very, very shortly. So you'll see here we've got a few different tabs at the top. Content model, of course, is where we're at the moment, where we're going to define our pages, our snippets, how our site works, and what content we want there. Settings for kind of global site settings, and then the content tab is where we'll jump into that Wagtail instance and try out our content, see if the editor experience is what we want, and if not, jump back to content model and revisit it. And we're going to see what that flow looks like later. For now, we're starting with the homepage, which of course every Wagtail site starts with, and we're going to create some new content types that are relevant for our conference hosting site. So we're going to start by just kind of studying them out. We're going to quickly think, what does our site hierarchy look like? What models are we going to need? So to start with, let's say we want the classic event, and we want an event page. And for now, I'm just going to start it out, so I'm just going to create rather than adding fields. And again, for each event, we're going to have multiple talks. So we're going to have a talk page. Again, we've got a new page tag here. And then we're going to want speakers, and maybe we think a speaker's going to give multiple talks, just like Dan giving both a lightning talk and a regular full-length talk. So we'll create a snippet type for a speaker that we're going to link to multiple talks later on. So wagtail makes it kind of quite easy to think about things like the relationships between your models before you start going into kind of building up the fields directly, and particularly things like tree hierarchy. Which parents can have which children, so on. So we're going to lay that out pretty logically. We're going to say, okay, our main things are events, so they're going to be sitting right under the homepage, and each event might have multiple talks, and that will be sitting under the event. So let's go and configure that hierarchy now. So we can jump into configure, and we can jump into relationships, and we see kind of diagram for what it can be child of, what it can be a parent of. So we're going to start by saying event can be a child of homepage, and it can be a parent of talk. It can't exist inside root. We'll change that. Similarly, let's kind of jump through and look at each of these. You'll see that some of these relationships have updated automatically, so they're kind of in sync. The different pages are in sync with each other. That would be a nice advantage over having to fill each one in by hand manually. So we're going to say homepage, we only really want one homepage at the site root, and we're going to say it can be, again, the parent of event, but not any of these other pages. And then for talk, again, we'll just jump in, configure the relationships, and we can say talk to be child of event, can't be child of itself. Go like that. And just like that, you'll see we've kind of set up the site hierarchy. The next thing, of course, is we might want to jump in and kind of fill out a few basic fields. What content are we going to want on all of these models? So for an event, let's jump in. And you can see we've got the kind of wagtail tabs up here. And we've got a few default things on there because it's a page type. If it was snippet, we'd be stuck with nothing. So let's add some fields. As you can see, when we click this, we get some options, and it kind of encourages you to think about how you might structure your content in Wagtail, what your editor experience is going to look like. So alongside a single field and a stream field, we have the option of a field group. So let's say we want some dates. We want a start date and an end date for a multi-day conference like wagtail-space. Create a field group. And then we're going to start laying out the content in there. So we're going to have date and time. So it's the date in this case. We're going to have start date. But of course, wouldn't really be a conference if we didn't have a start date. So let's make that required. And you can kind of start thinking and see how it kind of encourages you to start thinking about these kind of validation early. Again, just like start date, let's add an end date quickly. And again, no good thing lasts forever. So let's make this required. People get very confused. And then let's say we want a few more kind of explanatory fields. What is this conference really about? And we're going to want to maybe include pictures, some links, some venues, and of course this kind of mixed match content where we don't know what each conference will be is an ideal case for a stream field. It's one of Wagtail's most popular features, so it would be a shame if Wagtail didn't add that as well. So here, we call it out separately just because it does behave so differently for an editor point of view. We're going to add a stream field. That's the example of calling it body. Date settings to start with. And you can see we get an option to choose blocks. Now, just like in all of the Wagtail sites you might create by hand, we know that you're going to want to reuse blocks across your site. You've created a cool structure block, you want it with a featured talk, you want it in more than one field. And we kind of encourage this first time. If you created any custom blocks or any default blocks as we've just got here, you can tick them to say, yeah, I want these in the stream field rather than needing to create them from scratch. So here I'm going to say, okay, we're going to want some images, we're going to want some rich text. Let's save that. But now, okay, for a conference, maybe we want to call out some talks we think are particularly cool. So let's add a new custom block, which is going to be our featured talk block. And here we're offered a choice of blocks, but we can also decide to group them, which of course we call a field group here, just to call out from an editor point of view, blocks and fields are pretty similar. So this is going to create a struct block, and we're going to call this featured talk. You get the option to add some fields. So we're going to add a page user, because of course we're going to link this into a talk page. Choice of our pages, and we're going to say, of course, that this is required. There's no sense having a featured talk block if we're not featuring talk. And then let's add some text to explain why we think it's so cool. Let's just say that's required as well. We don't want any talk sitting around without an explanation of why we're featuring them. So we've created our stream field definition. We've got our event page now. So let's jump back and let's see what the other content models look like. Because they're going to want some fields as well. There we go. And for talk, we're going to want to link that into a speaker. Who's giving it? So as a speaker of a snippet, we're going to want a snippet user. And we're going to link that into speaker. And we've only got one choice here because we've only got one snippet. But jumping into the talk frame, maybe a stream field would be overkill, but we do want a bit of explanation of what was talked about, and it might include some richer elements. So let's add a rich text field there. And again, when we get some settings, just like in wagtail, you can define what features you want in here. Let's say we kind of want our editors to have a choice, but we don't really want them putting a whole nest of heading structure inside that field. So let's untick all the heading options, let's enable search, and let's boost it. And these search options are also available on all these other fields. It will encourage you to think about these kind of things early. What you want to be searching for, how you're going to be navigating your site, not as an editor, but also eventually on your own front end. So let's add that in. So we've set up talk, we've set up event, we've set up the relationships. What we haven't set up now is speaker, and I think they really do need a name. So let's just add that there for now and keep this one pretty lightweight. Similarly, we're going to say this is how we want to search the model, and if we have any other fields, we don't want this to be boosted. And of course, it's required. We don't want any unnamed speakers sitting around. So there we go. So we've got some changes. We've built our kind of prototype content model. But the next step, of course, is to see how do we actually like it in practice, rather than kind of going, deploying it to an environment, sharing it around people. Here is just as simple as kind of clicking this deploy button and confirming you're happy with those changes. So let's deploy the project. And you'll see there will be a little delay as we deploy to Google Cloud. But as soon as that's done, we can hop over to the content tab, and we can start entering some test content, and even share it with other users on our site to see how they like these ideas. In the meantime, we could keep editing for next time we deploy, or have a look at the settings tab, where you can kind of configure some primarily export related things that Carl's going to be using later. In the background, as we said, this is going to be deployed to Google Cloud. So in this database in Aviary, in Wagtail Builder, we've got all of these models stored. We're modeling each of your models, each of your everything you've done, and as we deploy to Google Cloud, we're going to be we're going to be running the migrations, create those models, and generating the code in the deployed site. So as you can see, it's 90% complete. As soon as it's done, we will zip over and we will start creating that test content. There we go. You'll see there's a little delay the first time. This is because the container is just kind of warming up, but yeah, we're hoping to reduce that in the future. And yeah, in a few seconds, you should see the wagtail admin come up. There we go. So we're logged into not a mimic, but a real wagtail admin instance here. You can see at the moment we've just got the default content that comes with any new wagtail site, one page to the home page. But let's start creating some test content. So first, let's jump into the snippets menu, and you can see that your speakers are already registered. Let's create a speaker, and I'm going to be egocentric and add myself. And now that seems to work pretty okay. I'm happy with that. Maybe it's a little lightweight, but it's fine for me. We'll see if Carl likes it later. But for now, let's go and create some pages. So let's create an event. Let's say wagtail-space Netherlands, for example. Start date, if I remember correctly, was Tuesday. And date is certainly today. And now let's add a little in our script field, so just a paragraph block for now, and let's say you should come. Enough of an advertisement for now, right? And then let's publish that page. And now let's add a talk. Let's just add one so we can kind of test out our content. What does it look like? And let's add this one. A builder. Thankfully, I've added myself already, so I can choose myself as a speaker. And I'm going to say, we're going to tell you. I'm going to publish that. Okay, I'm happy with it so far, but not everyone is. So I'm going to hand over to Carl, who's going to try adding his own content and see what he thinks about it.
Does that work?
Join this one, Carl.
Very cool.
Decoy.
Yes, so as we very rarely build sites on our own, I'm going to play the role of a developer or client on this site. So I'm going to firstly have a look at what Jacob's done, and I can see that he's created a couple of pages with some nice fields. That all looks good to me. So maybe I would also be egocentric like Jacob and add myself as a speaker, since he seems to have missed me out. There we go. But I also would quite like to upload a photo of myself in this. So let's go back into the content model and add a photo field. Go back here. Let's give our speaker. I'm going to add a field. Single field image. I'm going to name that photo. And there we go. And there it is. So let's deploy that. So this is currently generating another project, a new lot of code, and it's deploying that to Google Cloud. While that's running, you can still edit things, and you can still access the admin. It's also generating a migration, so it's going to add that field to the existing model. It's not going to delete the data. So yeah, you can continue to work on your site as you're working on the test data as well. It's also deploying a Boolean deployment, so it's rather than sort of updating existing environments, actually deploying sort of a new environment with a new database, and it's migrating that new database. Then it's going to switch over to that new environment as soon as everything's done, everything looks good. So if there is any bugs in our migration, then there is going to be hopefully no effect on the actual site. So 90% is nearly done. again, it's going to take a little moment to warm up. Speakers. There we go, we've got a photo for now, so I can now upload a photo from my computer. Okay, this one. Okay. So yes, images will work as well. So yeah, there we go. I'm quite happy with that now. So I'm going to now do an export to GitHub so we can start building up templates and making a proper wagtail site. So we do that by going first into settings. And as you can see, you can change the name of your site at any time. You can also customize the name that it uses in your export as well. So if you want to like have a shorter name, you can do that, and you can also change the time zone. It has two settings as well. But let's click this button here. That's export project. Export code to GitHub. So we need to log in first. Yep. So I'm just going to authorize it. So this just gives it permission to create repositories. I'm going to go back into that again. And yes, let's create a wagtail-space. There we go. So it'll immediately create the repository. It takes about 10 seconds to run the project and push it. So give it a moment. There we go. So there we go. We've got an initial commit. We've got management PY requirements. It's quite basic at the moment. So let's go through into the code. We've got some apps here. So we've got like a media app, which is an image and document model. Got a user model as well. And we've got two apps here for now, just pages, page models, and snippet models. So I'm just going to go into page models. As you can see, here's that talk page that Jacob defined. So we've got that speakerphone key, we've got the rich text field. It's also giving you your search fields and your parent page and sub-page types have been added here as well. So there you go, and also in like a separate file we've got blocks.py, blocks, paragraph blocks, we've got that block here. So there you go, that repository is public, so you can have a little look through that yourself. So you see it, github.com, hydrocode, wagtail-space, if you want to have a little browse and do that. So I'm going to hand it back to Bill.
Thanks, very cool. Bit of a shame I wasn't really included in the speakers, guys. Whatever. Well, hopefully you're excited about that and interested to have a look at it. One of the interesting things about it is this. We've shown a number of people in this room, a number of people outside of this room who are Wagtail users this as we've been building it, as we've been designing it, to try and work out kind of which way we should go with it and how we should go. And there's still multiple ways that this could go, right? It's quite cool right now, but there'll be people out there who are going, but what if you added data there, but right now the data, I can't get that data out. What if you could also export the data? Like I could let my clients add all their data as we're building the rest of the site, and then at the end I can export the data. It's like gather content or whatever. It's kind of similar to that. Yeah, that sounds cool. But hang on, what if we could have like config files? Like we could have almost like build packs where I could set all the configuration that I want to always come out in every export I have. Because I'm always deploying to Heroku, so I just want my Heroku deploy files there, all my front end tooling there. Yeah, that's pretty cool. But hang on, what if you've got a hosted Wagtail site over here? What if we just have like cloud hosting and it's just for like headless Wagtail sites? Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like these are all really cool different directions we can take this in. But one of the things we're trying to work out at the moment is like what should we do with this now? So which way should we go? As well as thinking about the minor UX issues, the minor bugs that might be in there, or the major bugs, hopefully not, but the minor bugs that might be in there. So what we need really is your help. So today we'd like to offer everyone who's here free access to Wagtail Builder during our private beta phase, which we're in right now. So this will mean that you guys can get to use this and try it out and use it for any purposes you want. Try and figure out if it is going to be valuable for you or not, or what would need to be added to it to make it valuable. And for us, we want your feedback. right? So if you're going to be using it, we'd like to be hearing from you. We'll be contacting you, these kinds of things, just to try and get some research and understand which way we can take this thing in the future, if it is of any value to people. So with that, this website, wagtail.build, you can jump on there, you can put your email address in, and how do you hear about us, and especially that one for the people who are watching this not live, but maybe in the
you're
future.
live.
Are they live?
Yeah.
Before you, out to the rest of the world, please go on here. For everyone who's here, we're going to be sat up upstairs at one of the tables straight after this, and during the other breaks. You can come to us and fill out an onboarding form, and we'll try and get you set up today so you can, go home this evening and enjoy yourselves. So, thanks very much, and we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your questions.
Questions.
I don't know how this should work. Do I choose people? Person at the back, you were the first person with your hand up, yeah.
Alright, so what if I've already exported the project to GitHub?
Yeah.
Then of course I'm going to modify everything. I'll be deleting pages and adding pages and changing things. So will Wagtail Builder create a pull request with the changes that I can merge then, or how does it work?
So the question was, thank you Tom, concept of pride. The question was, I've done my, what I thought was correct, I've exported that code to GitHub, but then I realised it's not right, I want to go back into Wagtail Builder and update that. What happens when I then re-export? So right now the answer is it'll export, each export you do goes into a new project, and that's one of the things that we've realised through the testing we've done so far, we actually want to change and update. So I think our plan is, Jacob, your mic, so what's the plan?
So we've thought about making a way that it's easier to make.
Your mic's not on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
we've,
bad.
We've thought about a way to make it easier to add, to re-export and kind of make a pull request based on your code. Obviously, Wagtail Builder doesn't know what kind of custom code you've made at the moment, so that will rely on adding making a sensible diff that can basically. We're hoping that will still be useful in the future, as Phil says. We've talked about potentially for people who want to keep their sites on Wagtail Builder full time, doing a cloud hosting option where you just stay on Builder. But yeah, for now it is very much more a prototyping tool, and hopefully you'll be able to make, as long as you haven't changed your site too much, you'll still be able to get some use out of making this follow-up pull requests in the future.
Did that answer your question?
It did.
Great.
Thank you.
No. Who's next? Okay, we've got a hand up here. Yeah.
I was wondering if any kind of API is included by default.
No is the answer right now. No APIs, guys?
Yeah, not at the moment.
Not at the moment is the answer, but that's definitely one of the things we're interested in thinking about. That would be one of the directions you might be able to go to turn the REST APIs on or GraphQL or something like that. But once you start doing that, you start going, oh yeah, this is now hosted. You start going, oh no, we need all the hooks. We need to be able to, you also need to keep all the data forever, always, these kinds of things. So there's a bit more work to do, but it's it's an exciting and interesting thing to think about. Thanks. Yeah, sure.
Can you import third-party packages and it will recognize the logs from that package on the functions? Like both.
So the question was, can we import third-party packages into a Wagtail Builder site? And the answer to that is no at the moment. It would be a really nice thing to be able to add, but it does complicate things, with our keeping Wagtail updated automatically. While all the Python code is under control of Wagtail Builder, we can just automatically roll out Wagtail updates. And if there's custom code running in Wagtail Builder, that kind of block that. So that's kind of the reason why we don't explore that at the moment.
Just say on that, we do have ideas for supporting a small ecosystem of packages in Builder by default. So for example, we might decide to turn on something like Wagtail Content or Wagtail Localized by default or as an option. But I think, arbitrary third-party packages are a long way off.
Thanks. Any other questions? Oh yeah, I'm here.
What is the target audience of Wagtail Builder? Because because wagtail is really focused on developers.
Mhm.
So do you want to create a new target audience site builders that can build the configuration and export it, or is it targeted to developers to make their life a little bit easier?
I think our target audience at the moment is you guys, the wagtail community, and a lot of the wagtail community right now is made up of lots of developers and people. But we'd like you guys to hopefully take this back and show the rest of your team members. At the moment, wagtail, if you're a content modeler, like as your role, and you're maybe not someone who sits down and writes code, wagtail's not really an option for you, right? In terms of using compared to some other options, and we hope that this will open up that a little bit as well. But right now, for us, Wagtail Builder, the way that it works and how it works, we see it as like jump-starting any kind of new project that you want to start with, right? When you're working collaboratively with clients, as many of us do, it can be quite challenging sometimes to get them to understand when you're trying a content model using a spreadsheet. You're like, okay, this is a snippet, this is a this, and they're like, what are you talking about? And then you go and build it, and then they're like, that's not right. And this hopefully is just like the quickest feedback loop of that, where you're able to almost sit with them, they can have access and see what's going on. And once you get it to that point that you feel like it's roughly right, you can either let them continue to play around with it, or you can export it and then go on and do the rest of the stuff. So it's cutting down those first weeks or days to like hours is hopefully the point. Sure.
I've got a question about required content. If you if you already have content and then add a field that is required, then the old fields don't have that value yet.
Can take this one?
Yeah, so sorry, I've done most of the migration for this one. So yeah, that's absolutely true. And
Did you want to repeat the question?
I yelled in the remote people have heard me.
Yeah, so basically the way we've done it at the moment is because we're focusing on Wagtail Builder, the rapid prototyping tool, we say we want to keep your test content as long as possible, but if you've added something required, we don't have any hesitation about deleting because it's test content. It's test content for you to just try out the editor experience. So you add something that's required and we can't deal with, and you haven't added a default, we have to delete it, and we say, okay, go in. And that's one reason why we're not quite at cloud hosting yet. We're doing the hosting, but we're not doing the data migrations. One thing we've thought about as we go further on the roadmap is having more and more situations where we take your test data, we migrate it, and we automatically generate a data migration for you and try and preserve it in almost any circumstance. But for now it's test data, and if there's anything compatible, we say no. The important thing is to get you moving again fast.
Thank you.
Sure.
Did you mention what license you're thinking of for this project?
We did mention what license we're thinking of this project. What license we're thinking of this project? Closed source for now. Apparently. I think there's lots of opportunities for this. We're not sure which way to go. We've obviously spent. Torchbox has invested, relatively large amount so far in what we've got so far, but yeah, we've got a lot of opportunities ahead of us. We haven't really got a roadmap. We've got like an opportunity tree. Like, where should we go? And we really appreciate, you guys trying this out, seeing what value you do get from it.
Also, just to follow up from that, quickly, it's more of a it's more of a service and less of like a package you could straightforwardly install. So there's a fair bit of kind of, if you wanted to run your own instances, there'd be a fair bit of infrastructure. So for now we're keeping it close.
Okay, we're just coming up to lunch, I think, and I think we might have done most questions. Do feel free to come and ask us lots more questions, especially more specific questions. We're really keen to talk to you about this today. Thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, thank you very much.
It is almost 1 o'clock, so that means, 12 o'clock, so that means that we're going to have a break of 1 hour. Stretch your legs. Upstairs is lunch. If you haven't strolled around Arna, please do so. If you want to smoke, please do so outside of the doors of this theater. And we'll be seeing you back a little bit before 1 because we want to start back at 1.
Heb je pauze staan?
Deze mogen? Ja, die mag omhoog. Ja,
Adapter zit eraan, de converter. Kijk maar wat je nodig hebt. Deze zit in nou, ja.
We have got.
We gaan eerst kijken, we hebben namelijk ook een output gekregen. Dus we gaan kijken of we met 2 kabels aan elkaar kunnen maken of dat lang kan lopen. Kijken of dat werkt met monos en dat zo helemaal. Ze is dus vergeten dat wij een audiovisueel assistent hadden. Ja, ik begreep het, dat is echt stom. Ja, het staat zo'n offerte, dus dezelfde offerte heeft wat ik had gemeld, dus ja, dat willen we.
Dus.
Nee. Kun je hem er niet, je kan hem er toch afhalen? Wat heb je nodig?
Hij moet een vrouwtje in de kast beginnen.
Ja, maar die kabel is toch vrouwtje of niet?
Dit is een vrouwtje.
Ja?
En dan heb ik een mannetje hier. En dan daar ook een mannetje. Wat heb je beneden dan? Vrouwtje?
Ja, vrouwtje. Vrouwtje, ja.
Dus die kabel is helemaal andersom.
Nee, die kabel is volgens mij... Ja, maar dan kan ik hem niet aansluiten, of wel? Doe maar.
Dan hebben wij weer voor...
Ik snap het niet, maar ik geloof je.
En nu? Is dit hoe je het wil horen?
Geluid hierboven is prima.
Nu? Nu is het goed.
Ja. Yes.
Franklin, we gaan niet die changes doen met die capture card. Ik draai het van gemeten, hij stript bij hem. Als je moet overschakelen, sta je iedere keer te pielen. Ik zet de camera gewoon eentje hoger.
Ja.
En dan vanaf hier, zeg maar, achter je. En dan filmen we gewoon het totaal.
Oké.
En dan is het gewoon zo.
Kasper, ik heb een keer